Hi everyone, welcome back to the Menace Show, and this is the first live stream on this particular channel for 2021. And on this stream, I want to do something that had inspired me on a previous channel of a friend of mine who will stream from time to time. Shout out to Mr. Seshoo. Seshoo used to read the writings of Seneca. I believe there was, Seneca, Letters of a Stoic by Seneca. Yeah, I believe so. And his idea to read philosophy on a live stream inspired me to actually pursue the same thing, really, but with a little bit of a Menace twist on it. And I kind of want to comment here and there as I go along, but also I want to just read as well, read something a little bit different from Western literature, although that could be a future streams, because again, I'm just here to learn and explore. I'm not here for Mr. Perfection, because that's not what this show's about. This show's actually about imperfection, not perfection. Fuck being perfect. That's such like an industrial era goal in this day and age, which is a lot of what's probably led us to the path that we're on right now, which is not exactly a good one. Now, having said that, this is by Inazo Nitobe, The Way of the Samurai, or Samurai to Serve in Japanese, because I studied a little bit at school. So what are we going to be looking at by Mr. Inazo Nitobe? We're going to be looking at Bushido. Now, I'm not a martial artist by any means, but I would like to say that, again, let's explore. Let's learn new stuff. So this was first published in 1900 by Inazo Nitobe's classic exposition of the way of the samurai. This is the introduction by, what's his name? Let's find his name. John Badlock, the Arcturus edition of Inazo Nitobe's work. And this is the preface and the intro. The Way of the Samurai was written at a time when Japan was undergoing a profound transformation as it emerged from the feudalism and closed doors seclusion of the Edo period to become a modern nation. Originally written in English for Western readers and published under the title Bushido, The Soul of Japan. The present book was one of the first major works to offer an insightful account of the principles underlying the samurai tradition and the influential role these had played in the molding of Japanese culture and the character of the Japanese people, both of which had appeared in contemporary Western eyes. As such, it was read by many influential foreigners, among whom may be counted as President Theodore Roosevelt, President John F. Kennedy, and Robert Baden-Powell, founder of the Boy Scout movement, who is said to have studied the educational techniques of Bushido while writing Scouting for Boys. That's pretty interesting. Following its original publication in English, Nitobe's book was subsequently translated into Japanese and many other languages. Now, I'm going to stop. I won't read the full introduction because it's a pretty lengthy one, but I do want to say that the term Bushi had evolved by the 8th century. And Bushido itself means the way of the samurai, just for context sake. So Bushi is referring to the educated warrior poet ideal or role model. But later, not back then, but later, the term would become synonymous with samurai. Now, the warrior poet was first pictured in the word uruwashi, which is an earlier term for samurai. So that's pre 8th century. And it comes from the characters bun, to study, and bu, military arts. Whereas early usage of the word samurai, or those that serve with the nobility, or basically bureaucrat, public servant, warrior bureaucrat, didn't become associated with warriors and military men until several centuries later. So the idea itself evolved over time. It was not always known as samurai. You had the terms study and martial arts. But as well, before that, you had uruwashi, which was prior to the word samurai, just for context, just so you guys know. And I'm only pointing that out just that way you don't think of things through Western eyes. We're trying to think of these terms through Eastern eyes when reading an Eastern text as best as we can. So, dedication. Chapter 1. To my beloved uncle Toki Toshi, or Da, who taught me to revere the past and to admire the deeds of the samurai, I dedicate this little book. There are, if I may so say, 3 powerful spirits which have from time to time moved on the face of the waters and given a predominant impulse to the mortal sentiments and energies of mankind. These are the spirits of liberty, of religion, and of honor. And that's a quote by Halam Europe in the Middle Ages, Halam. And this is by Schlegel. Chivalry is itself the poetry of life. Schlegel, the philosophy of history. Interesting quotes, those ones. I need to process them a bit more and ruminate on them. Okay, that's a preface. Chapter 1. Bushido as an ethical system. Chivalry is a flower no less indigenous to the soil of Japan than its emblem, the cherry blossom. Nor is it a dried up specimen of an antique virtue preserved in the herbarium of our history. It is still a living object of power and beauty among us, and if it assumes no tangible shape or form, it not the less sense the moral atmosphere, and makes us aware that we are still under its potent spell. The conditions of society which brought it forth and nourished it have long disappeared, but as those far-off stars, which once were and are not, still continue to shed their rays upon us, so the light of chivalry, which was a child of feudalism, still illuminates our moral path. Surviving its mother institution, it is a pleasure for me to reflect upon this subject in the language of Burke, Burke, not the British philosopher Burke. This is a different Burke, Burke, who uttered the well-known touching eulogy over the neglected beer, B-I-E-R, of its European prototype. It argues a sad defect of information concerning Far East when so erudite as a scholar as Dr. George Miller did not hesitate to affirm that chivalry or any other similar institution has never existed either among the nations of antiquity, among the modern Orientals. Now, bearing in mind in those days, Orientals was used as the term that was similar to Asian people. Orientals was just the term that they used back then. So cancel me all you want, but I'm reading from a book. So by cancelling me using proper sources from an Eastern author, You are proving yourself to be the racist ones. Lefties. Shall we continue? Yep, I think we should continue. Such ignorance, however, is amply excusable, as the third edition of the Good Doctor's work appeared the same year that Commodore Perry was knocking at the portals of our exclusivism. Oh, that's true, yeah, because Japan was isolated back then. That's actually true. And it was Commodore Perry who came in a literal gunboat, like literal gunboats. This is where the word gunboat diplomacy comes from. It's actually back in Japan, back around this time period. And he forced Japan to basically agree to signing a treaty with America, the United States of America at the time, and then forcing Japan to freely conduct trade more openly on the market. That was the gunboat diplomacy of back then, which literally came from Commodore Perry. More than a decade later, about the time that our feudalism was in the last throes of existence, Karl Marx, writing his Kapital, Das Kapital, called the attention of his readers to the peculiar advantage of studying the social and political institutions of feudalism, as then to be seen in living form only in Japan. I would likewise invite the Western historical and ethical student to study the chivalry in the Japan of the present. That's a pretty interesting comment, that one. I need to think about that more. That's a pretty interesting comment. I wonder why the author tries to get us to do that, because I think they've realized that those traditions never died. That's just my side commentary. Enticing as is a historical disquisition on the compassion between European and Japanese feudalism and chivalry, it is not the purpose of this paper to enter it into at length. Okay, so what this author is doing, okay, this is part of the paper. What this author is doing is he's trying to trace the origin of the concept of chivalry and compare it from the Western to the Eastern framework. So this is obviously some scholarly commentary here. Interesting. Okay. This is an interesting note. I'm just going to skip over a lot of this scholarly analysis that the author gives us. Bushido then is the code of moral principles which the knights were required or instructed to observe. So this is a code of conduct. In modern words, modern terms, it would be a code of conduct, but essentially this is a way of living, a way of being. It is not a written code. At best, it consists of a few maxims handed down from mouth to mouth or coming from the pen of some well-known warrior or savant. More frequently, it is a code unuttered and unwritten, possessing all the more the powerful sanction of veritable deed, and a law written on the fleshly tablets of the heart. So it's a spiritual concept, but it's a spiritual warrior concept of duty and honor. It is not a centralized text, or it's not a text that centralizes a philosophy, not as materialists would have you believe it. That's interesting. Got to say, these illustrations in this book are absolutely beautiful. They are astounding. Very astounding. And then it goes on to chapter 2, Zen. Okay, let's see. I just want to see if these are original writings or if this is just an essay. I think this is a scholarly work. Yeah, this looks like a scholarly work. I'm just browsing through it now. Okay, this is a scholarly work. This is literally a scholarly book. What I'll do is I will not read too much. I don't want to bore the audience too much with a bunch of information. So I will read just up to here, just half the chapter up to here. And then we can build on this idea because this is a pretty intense text. And it's not a text that you would read in one sitting either. So I'll stop it there. This is just the first reading, and I hope you guys enjoy my voice and my reading of such work and my commentary as well. Yeah. So think about the thoughts of the book that I've read, and I may actually read from Hakagure next. I might do two texts at the same time. This one, because this is like the context, it explains the context pretty well. And then Hakagure, I think, is the best primary text that one can go back to when talking about the samurai spirit and how we can potentially apply it to today's day and age. Okay, I'll stop it there. Thank you so much for coming by. I'll try to keep these streams within the 20-minute to 30-minute range. I don't want these to go on for hours and hours and hours because no one has the time for that. And I'll see you guys all in future streams. This is Dennis on the Menace Show, Dennis the Menace, signing off. I will be back with more philosophy soon. Bye for now.